We want to talk about what depositional landforms result from glaciation. We mentioned that rocks can be pulled from the sides of the valley that the glacier is flowing through, and that also rocks could then be incorporated into the glacier and could then flow with the glacier downhill. We also said that a glacier can push material in front of it. So all of these kinds of materials, after the glacier has retreated, can form depositional landforms, which we call moraines. And so you have lateral moraines, which are going to be the debris that is going to accumulate at the sides of the glacier as it's moving downhill. Where two of these glaciers come together, the lateral moraines can then be turned into medial moraines. Then the material that is bulldozed in front of the glacier can become a end moraine. So the end moraine is going to be at the end of the glacier. The lateral moraines are going to be at the sides of the glacier, and then a medial moraine is going to be in the middle of the glacier. Okay, some other kinds of depositional landforms that can result are kames and eskers. So imagine that the ground is covered by a glacier. So here's a side view of here's the surface of the earth. Here is the top of the glacier, and now what we're interested in is what's going on down here at the bottom of the glacier. Well, a lot of times down here at the bottom you have liquid water, and that liquid water is going to be making an underground river that is then going to exit somewhere at the end of the glacier. Well, this water can make a tunnel, and then that tunnel can get filled in with sediments. Then when the glacier melts back, those sediments remain, and then those sediments are going to be an esker. So eskers make linear lines on the ground, and they represent material that was flowing underneath the glacier in a tube, and then when the glacier went away, all of that material remained. A kame is going to be a more concentrated pocket of material that formed underneath the glacier, and then when the glacier melted back, you have the kame. Okay, then you've got drumlins. So a drumlin is a more resistant layer of rock or soil that the glacier went over the top of. So originally it was like a mound like that, and then as the glacier went across it, it kind of stretches it out and carves it into more of a asymmetrical feature. So it's going to be basically a bump on the ground that's going to be left over after the glacier melts back. Now sometimes the glacier is going to calve off, meaning that as it starts to melt backwards, part of this glacier is just going to break off and is going to be left behind. Well, that's going to form as it melts, it's going to form a depression in the ground, and then that's going to be called a kettle. And then those kettles can fill with water, and then you can have ponds and lakes left over as the glacier melts back. Okay, another kind of depositional landform is going to be glacial till. So this is going to be rocks that have been ground down to the point at which they're basically powder, and they're going to come out of the front of the glacier. You also have material that is so fine that comes out of the glacier it can be caught up by the wind, and so it can be blown around by the wind and can accumulate in these big piles that we're going to call a glacial loss or loess. Okay, you could also have glacial erratics. So these are rocks and could even be boulders that are caught up in the glacier, and then when the glacier melts back, those rocks basically just fall where they wherever they ended up at. So for example, in Central Park of New York City in North America, you have these glacial erratics that were left over by glaciers that came down from Canada. Some of these glacial erratics can be deposited in the ocean. So here you've got a glacier that extends out into the ocean, and then as it melts back, the rocks and stuff that were incorporated in that glacier, they just drop to the bottom of the ocean. And so that would be a glacial marine. Okay, let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about what are some consequences of continental glaciation.